Welcome to Star Trek Selections: The Next Generation. Today I will be discussing my top 5 episodes of Season 1. Number 5, Conspiracy, written by Tracy Torme from a story by Robert Sabaroff and directed by Cliff Bole. Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard is contacted by his old friend Captain Walker Keel, who along with 2 other Starfleet captains informs Picard of his concern about a possible nefarious conspiracy in the upper echelons of Starfleet Command. Soon after this meeting, Keel's ship is destroyed, leaving no survivors. A now suspicious Picard orders Brent Spiner's Lieutenant Commander Data to examine recent orders from Starfleet to search for patterns which supports Keel's assertions, which he finds, prompting Picard to contact Admiral Quinn, who, along with Lieutenant Commander Remick, had appeared a few episodes earlier. Quinn then beams aboard the new Enterprise 1701D, while Picard beams down to have dinner with 2 other admirals. Quinn then attacks Jonathan Frakes' Commander William Riker and attempts to attach a bug-like parasite to him. Gates McFadden, as Dr. Beverly Crusher, phases Quinn and discovers the parasite. When the admirals reveal to Picard that they are also under the influence of the parasites, Picard and Riker must deal with them and ultimately their leader, in the form of Remick, who dies in possibly the most gruesome scene in all of Star Trek, which is primarily what this episode is known for. Season 1 of The Next Generation is not generally well thought of, and I do consider it one of the weakest in Star Trek's long history. However, there is enough to keep you interested, and this episode, coming late in the season, is one of the highlights. It has an engaging story, well performed by all involved, and most notably well paced by director Cliff Bole, who the species the Bolians, who first appear in this episode, is named after. Conspiracy is a good dramatic episode of The Next Generation with some action and some genuinely surprising, even shocking moments. See Remick's exploding head. And it fits comfortably on my list of Star Trek The Next Generation's best first season episodes. Number 4, Symbiosis. Story by Robert Lewin, teleplay by Lewin, Richard Manning and Hans Beimler, and directed by Win Phelps. The Enterprise rescues some people from a ship in the nick of time, 2 Ornarans, T'Jon and Romas, and 2 Breccians, Sobi and Langor, along with their cargo, a shipment of Felicium, an apparent medicine produced by the Breccians and required by the Ornarans. As the 2 sides argue about who owns the Felicium, Dr. Crusher discovers that it is a narcotic and the entire Ornaran population is addicted. And in my favourite scene of the episode, Picard realises that the Breccians know all about it and are little more than drug dealers.
We have decided to give the Felicium to them.
They can pay whenever they are able.
We don't want to be the ones responsible for their suffering.
There goes the other shoe. They know.
However, he is hamstrung by regulations regarding non-interference with other cultures, but comes up with an elegant, albeit harsh, solution. In the great tradition of issue-based episodes, Symbiosis is a good early next-gen example of how Trek can take a contemporary issue and explore it in a futuristic terms, getting to the heart of the matter without needing to clutter it up with the specific details of real-world examples. The issue in this case is, of course, drugs. And for me, I think it is dealt with quite sensitively, particularly in the scene where Denise Crosby's Tasha Yar explains drug addiction to Will Wheaton's oblivious Wesley Crusher. Symbiosis also has 2 guest actors who both appeared in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Judson Scott as Sobi and Merritt Buttrick as T'Jon. Buttrick's work in Symbiosis was one of his final screen appearances before his untimely death in 1989, and he is the standout of this episode. A genuinely convincing and moving performance, which is, along with the well-written script, one of the main reasons why Symbiosis is one of my favourite episodes of the season. Number 3, Datalore. Story by Robert Lewin and Maurice Hurley, teleplay by Lewin and Gene Roddenberry himself, and directed by Rob Bowman. The Enterprise arrives at the planet Omicron Theta, which is where Data was discovered years earlier. On the planet, the away team find a disassembled android identical to Data. Back on board, the android is reassembled, calling himself Lore. Lore differs from Data due to the fact that he more closely resembles humans, in that he has human emotions and more human manner and speech patterns. While at first amiable, it is gradually revealed that Lore is scheming and malevolent. When Data threatens to expose him, Lore deactivates Data and assumes his place on the ship. And we find that Lore has been in contact with a being called the Crystalline Entity and was responsible for its attack on Omicron Theta Colony. Not only that, he is now offering up the Enterprise to it. Wesley Crusher is the first to suspect that this Data is actually Lore, but his attempts to communicate this to the captain are shot down famously.
Shut up, Wesley!
Wesley and his now also suspicious mother, Dr. Beverly Crusher, reactivate Data in time to stop the villainous Lore. For now, Lore will still be a perpetual thorn in Data's side going forward. In Brent Spiner's first dual role on the show, but certainly not the last, he does an excellent job differentiating the two characters, and the direction and cinematography by Bowman and Edward R. Brown make the illusion seamless, with some creatively composed shots and clever staging. While Datalore is a showcase for Spiner, I really think that Wesley is the MVP of this episode, story-wise. It's one of the character's brightest moments, realizing the truth and standing up for himself despite, well, you know.
Shut up, Wesley!
And Will Wheaton does a really good job here. But of course, the episode does belong to Brent Spiner. And Datalore, the first data-centric episode, one of many which will undoubtedly appear in videos to come, is easily one of my favourite episodes of the season. Number 2, Skin of Evil. Written by Joseph Stefano and Hannah Louise Shearer, from a story by Stefano, and directed by Joseph L. Scanlon. In this infamous episode, a shuttlecraft containing Marina Sirtis' counselor Deanna Troi crashes on the planet Vagra 2. When the Enterprise arrives to rescue her, they are unable to beam her up, so an away team consisting of Riker, Data, Dr. Crusher, and Lieutenant Tasha Yar beam down. They are met with a malevolent being made up of a pool of tar-like substance, who calls itself Armus. When Yar tries to approach the shuttle, Armus straight up murders her. But there is no time for the crew to grieve yet. They still have to rescue Deanna. When the away team return, Armus discloses that it is the physical embodiment of all the evil from the former inhabitants of the planet, and it begins cruelly toying with the away team, eventually consuming Riker. When Picard beams down, Armus releases Riker, and it is soon weakened enough to allow Troi to be beamed up. Then back on the Enterprise, all the series regulars attend a gathering where a holographic Tasha Yar tells them how she feels about them. The main reason this episode is so often discussed is the senseless death of Tasha Yar. The character was clearly not handled well from the beginning, despite Denise Crosby's best efforts, and the way she is killed is empty and meaningless. But it is still a very good early episode, high stakes, real tension, and a quite horrifying villain. However, the reason it is here on this list is that final scene in the holodeck. The entire cast perform it beautifully and authentically, with my favourite moment being Data attempting to understand the situation.
I keep thinking how empty it will be without her presence. Did I miss the point?
No, you didn't, Data. You got it.
And although Tasha died in such a pointless manner, her send-off was genuinely moving. And she gets a second chance a couple of years later in one of the greatest ever Star Trek episodes. And Skin of Evil is still one of my favourite episodes of Season 1. Number 1, The Big Goodbye. Written by Tracy Torme and directed by Joseph L. Scanlon. The very first holodeck-centered episode, and the first Next Generation episode I really loved, The Big Goodbye is about Captain Picard, who is frustrated by having to learn a complex alien greeting, and taking a break by playing a holonovel about private detective Dixon Hill, a Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe type. After a brief initial look, he gets dressed for the part and invites historian Whalen and Dr. Crusher, plus Data decides he wants to tag along. They all start having a great time, with Picard even enjoying his police interrogation.
From the top!
Oh, very good. I've read all this before, you know. It's absolutely as it should be.
But then Whalen is shot, and they realise that the holodeck safety protocols aren't working, and they are stuck in there. both of which will happen in almost every other holodeck episode that follows. Hey, there have to be stakes, right? Outside the holodeck, Riker has to deal with the impatient aliens who are waiting for the captain's greeting, while Wesley and LeVar Burton's Lieutenant Geordi LaForge try to fix the holodeck. The big goodbye, though it does have the dramatic stakes, is largely played for laughs. The ultra-British Patrick Stewart's amusing take on a hard-boiled American PI, Gates McFadden's fun little scene where she tries to fit in by imitating a hooker, and Brent Spiner doing a great impression of a film noir gangster-esque character. The sets and Emmy-winning costumes look great too, and the presence of Lawrence Tierney as the main heavy, Cyrus Redblock, really helps make it feel like an old Bogart movie. I do kind of wish the holodeck scenes were in black and white, but I get that done fantastically down the line with Voyager's Captain Proton. With a fun premise, which is the father of many great holodeck episodes to come, a welcome and witty central performance from Patrick Stewart, as well as Spiner and McFadden's great support, a genuinely authentic ambiance, and a clever and highly amusing script by Torme, The Big Goodbye is my favourite episode of the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation. Join me next time on Star Trek Selections when I'll be looking at Season 2 of The Next Generation.
Lieutenant, take us out of orbit.
Aye, sir.
And Mr. LaForge,
Sir.
step on it.